Hello again, Steve here with a few words on what I'm going to call holistic health. You've probably heard about the term. It sounds like alternative health, right? With maybe some little questionable approach, but I'm going to put my spin on it as to what I think it is. Holistic means complete, like everything, right? In fact, if you look up the word health, holistic health is rather a redundant term in a way because health itself means whole or completeness. And it's related to words like holy. People who are spiritual or whatever, they're holy, they're healthy. That's what it means. It means it's the same word, it's just a different spelling for it. Hallow. It means complete. So holistic health wouldn't just approach physical health. It wouldn't just approach mental health. It wouldn't just approach emotional health. It would be the whole package. And this is how I like to approach human growth, self-knowledge, what some people would call personal growth. I like to look at it as a holistic health exercise. Because the minute we recognize we could be more complete, that the gap between where we are and where we could be is the gap of holistic health incompleteness, if you will. So the one aspect is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, not necessarily simple, but simple to understand is the physical health, right? Two aspects at least there. We've got nutrition, and that would include water and so on, whatever we take into the body as and it could even be the air we breathe, all the intakes that make up the body, right? The whole body, if you think about it, the growth of it is all made up of what we put into the body. So the better fuel we put in, the better building blocks we put in, the more along the lines of what nature has developed, the better off we're going to be. And I find that a plant-based diet tends to work best for me. Other people would say otherwise, but that's what works best for me. And then, of course, exercise, right? The body was meant to be moved. Remember that movie, I think it was called Wally World, where you had people who didn't need to move anymore because everything was so computerized and mechanized and their limbs sort of gave out and they had to be carried around these little carts. But we don't want to get there, right? But we're sort of getting there with sitting down at these computers all the time. But there's lots of things we can do. We can get out and walk. We can stand up more often, get a stand-up desk, get off our butts more often. And the body is meant to be moved. We have large limbs, large lower limbs, which are far from the heart. Exercising those gets the blood pumping. It helps us physically. That's so obvious, right? Obviously, it's obvious. The next one is, of course, our mental health. And, there's always the controllables and the uncontrollables. I mean, if we're in a car accident, we get hit over the head and we have brain damage or whatever, well, we have that. And to the extent that we have that, we're less healthy mentally, perhaps. But there's lots that we can do to be more mentally healthy. We can read information that's going to help us, invigorating information, mind food. We can have intellectually stimulating conversations rather than just superficial comments about the weather and the family and whatever. There's superficial stuff, whose birthday it is and all this, and gossip. We can actually drill down and start to understand what other people are feeling and what we're feeling. I begin to learn and put the connections together. What is the subconscious mind? What is the conscious mind? Have an intellectual curiosity to learn. There's so much to learn in this world. Everywhere we look, there's something. Interesting how that actually works. How does that plant actually do its photosynthesis or whatever? There's so much to learn. That curiosity. And that involves also who we're hanging out with. If we're hanging out with a bunch of people who what they want to do is drink beer all the time, nothing wrong with drinking beer. I have a beer once in a while. But it tends to lead to a, shall we say, less than intellectual stimulating conversation, especially if there's more of them. More beers, that is. But, if we hang out with like minds, people who are also intellectually curious, This is going to help us. It's going to challenge us to grow. You know, if we hang out. I was listening to somebody, I forget who it was, who'd gone to this regular school and was top of the class, right? And then went to another school which is for gifted kids or whatever, and had to struggle again because all of a sudden the intellectual rigor was moved up at a couple of notches. And where before that person was up at the top of the rung, now wasn't so much, you know, but was used to rising to that. So it was a bit of a challenge. But this is good for us in a way. If we hang out with people who are intellectually challenging for us, it stimulates our mind and our strength in that area. So that's the mental. Now, emotional health, I would say, if we take actions that will encourage positive and enjoyable emotional reactions, such as achieving things that we never achieved, setting out on goals that we can move towards and feel the sense of success and achievement and happiness. And it could be something like, I'm going to give a certain number of gifts to people who wouldn't get gifts this year, or something like that. It gets us to feel like we've accomplished a human connection. It could be about making friendships, being more vulnerable friends, and talking about what we really feel about them and ourselves. All of those things feed into what I'm going to call our emotional honeypot. You know, so for so long it's been shut down by all kinds of stuff that have been dropped in there because of trauma, superficiality, formative years of lots of lies and propaganda. And we've taught ourselves, maybe unconsciously, mechanisms to protect ourselves against those sorts of things. But when we hang out with people and associate with information that's a learning environment, that creates a learning environment, and we begin to have those conversations, we begin to take actions on things that we always dreamt of, we begin to make achievements, we begin to experience those positive emotions and recognize them. We're aware of them. We can recognize what emotions and why it is that we're triggered on certain things and not on others. We get to learn about ourselves. Self-knowledge begins to happen more. And we're really starting to grow in our health holistically. And to me, this is foundation. This, ideally, in an ideal world, would be taught to kids early on, so that then they could go on and have successful relationships and build meaningful financial rewards and so on for themselves. But so often we chase those things in spite as a substitute for the core of what we could be holistically. So I think it's important to consider holistic health and what it is for us. And to me, what it is trying to discover what are the components or the facets of self, and making sure that each one of those facets has the chance to rise to its optimal state. Physically, if we can be optimally healthy. Mentally, if we can continue to challenge ourselves and grow in our mentality. Learn logical thinking. Learn critical thinking. Learn how to think for ourselves and how to be curious about learning. And then, of course, the emotional side of seeking out ways that we can stimulate and fill up and continue to add to our emotional honeypot with positive experiences with friends, family, with giving, with creating projects that we actually set ourselves up to succeed in and we get to feel accomplished. All of that makes us a stronger individual who can then, from that key tool, which is our individual self, ego, if you will, our individuated person, living person, we can then be more effective in other areas of our lives because we systematically become more holistically healthy. Then we can expand that to the health of our immediate relationships, our business relationships, our community, and all of that adds, all of that is part of our health. If we're living in miserable relationships, that says something about our holistic health, which has to be addressed. But when we find that strength in ourselves to be as holistically healthy as possible, so many things are like that emotional honeypot. They get filled up and we displace those, what are we going to call them? Those relationships that are not so good. Because if we only have so much time in the day, we're going to choose to spend time with those who are mentally, emotionally stimulating for us and constructive and healthy for us. And those relationships, that's the word, toxic. Those relationships that are toxic will automatically be diffused in our lives. And that's going to help us immensely, I would say. What do you think? Holistic health, important? I think it is, and I hope to be able to share more about this later. Steve, again, great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye for now.